Good morning, Dreamhouse Nation. It's James Lewis of This Dreamhouse, the show that is all about the house. Speaking of the house, we're talking about our home, the USA, and we're talking about Team USA Luge. Our guest today is Chris Mazdzar. He is going to be discussing his career and some of the great things that are going on with Team USA. Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, James.
So what sports did you play growing up?
That's a good question. I would say a lot of non-traditional sports. So I grew up around the Lake Placid area of northern New York. And when I say northern New York, I'm not talking like 1 or 2 hours north of the city. I'm talking 5 to 6. So much closer to the Canadian border than anything else. And what's also strange is that it is very cold in that area, where winter is 5-6 months out of the year. Like, it just snowed recently. My parents sent me a picture. It was snowing just a couple days ago. So if you do not enjoy the winter, you're going to have a hard time. So growing up, I mean, I loved sledding, cross-country skiing, and I even did ski jumping just because Lake Placid is home of it had the Olympics twice. And it does have a lot of Olympic venues up there. So as a young kid, you do have opportunities to try these weird sports where, like, at 6 years old, I was ski jumping. I'm cross-country skiing. At 8 years old, I had the opportunity to try bobsled and luge. I mean, that was all because of Cool Runnings, which really popularized the sport of bobsled. So my friends and I, luckily, our parents would alternate bringing us up once a week. We would go and, hey, let's go do bobsled. And the problem with bobsled is that you're only driving half the time. The other half, you're sitting in the back just holding on. The line's longer because it's a really cool sport, and the turnover is really slow. So you only get to drive 1 or 2 runs a night. But since I love sledding, there was this other sport called luge, which was on a separate track at the time, and there was no line because it really wasn't as popular. And if I ran from the bottom to where I started, I could get 10 runs a night. So it's weird. Growing up, I did all these really weird sports. Of course, I love soccer as well. That was kind of my spring sport. Did baseball. So yeah, I just love being outdoors and playing as many sports as possible.
Nice. So in other words, it seems like you were destined to play a winter sport based on where you live. Lake Placid is the home of the U.S. Olympics.
When I was in high school in Saranac Lake, 1 year for lacrosse, we would have to shovel the parking lots in order to practice because there was so much snow. So it wasn't like there was a long season for, other sports. You really had to embrace winter and be totally fine training in winter conditions pretty much all year round, because you never know. It could snow between September and May.
In the Olympics, these folks don't seem to get enough credit. Tell us about your coaches.
Coaching is definitely something that really you don't get to see up front. So current coaching staff, Rob Fegg, Bank Walden, Lubomir Mick, and it really is a family. So if you think about it, I've been traveling internationally since 13 years old. At that time, you really are on the road for 4 months out of the year with just a small group of people and these coaches. And really, a lot of them have become father-like figures. They've become really good friends just because they're able to pass on their knowledge to me. And even though luge is a 45-second run primarily, if you get to the bottom, it's a team effort to get there, to have this sled set up, to be mentally in the zone. So I'm lucky to say that I've had some really good coaches. When I retire, we're going to maintain friendships and build upon that. So it's something that doesn't go. They don't get the recognition that they deserve. Definitely, some of them put way more than your 9 to 5. They're in this 100%. They're in this 24 hours a day. I mean, when you're on the road, you wake up and it's luge. You go to bed sometimes anywhere between 10 p.m. and 2 in the morning because you're working on your sled. And that entire time, it's about the sport. So the coaches give just as much as the athletes, and it really is a team effort. So it's, even though it's an individual sport, sometimes it doubles. There's a huge team around each individual.
I know what you mean. I did wrestling, and it's, and a lot of people think individual, but it's really a team sport, like you said. I mean, if you don't have everybody, the coaches, the other teammates there, it just really, it isn't going to go anywhere unless you have a whole group effort. And it sounds like that's the same way with Luge.
No, 100%. Like, so at the Olympics, when I finished my fourth run and I came up and I saw that I got an Olympic medal, one of my coaches, Banks, he ran right over. He was the person, and it's like sharing that moment with him was so special because him and I had been through a lot. Like, at one point we were competitors, like we were teammates, and there was a questionnaire at one year, and it was like, who is your favorite coach and why? Like, the organization is just trying to figure out, like, coaching staff and whatnot. And I actually wrote down that my favorite coach was Banks, who was my competitor at the time, just because he was helping me. Like, he's 11 years older than I am. So at my first Olympics, like, I was 21, he was in his mid 30s, but he was just, there when I needed him. He was there, moral support. Like, if I had questions, he was just kind of helping me, even as a competitor. And like, when I found out that I had an Olympic medal coming up, just like, it was like so meaningful that he was there, because like, he had given so much of his time to see me succeed. And I would not be where I am today without him, for sure.
So in other words, that was in 2018 when you finished silver in the singles?
Yes, exactly. Like, I come up and my coach is there, just like the biggest hug. Like, it was such a cool moment. And that's something that we'll always have.
This probably sounds like an obvious question or an obvious answer. What is the difference between singles and doubles, Luge?
So it's a simple question. And it's like, oh, yeah, it's like probably the same sled, just two people. Not at all. It is, yes, we're going feet first, head back, which is the same in both singles and doubles. But the sleds are very different, and it's different with how they drive. So it's kind of like comparing like a race car to a school bus, if that makes sense. So the driving is totally different. It's a delayed steering. Also, we go from different start heights, so the speeds are a little bit different. So actually, this last year, I was the only person who competed both in singles and doubles at the World Cup level. And there's probably a reason for that. Most people thought it was impossible, like that I was crazy for even trying to do this. Like, the USA Luge actually didn't even believe that I could do this a couple of years ago. And luckily, I had some strong people from the coaching staff where they did believe in me. And they're like, no, if anyone can do it, I think Chris can do it. So they are, single sleds. You just like, think about it at home. You're on like a flexible flyer, just like an individual plastic sled. And now to do two people, I lay back on Jason. So I sit on a seat. There's a seat in the middle of this sled that I sit on and I am strapped to. So when we crash, all of a sudden I become the sled. And probably from the small of my back till just about my shoulders, that's laying back on Jason. And since I'm bigger, it's the heavier person is on top, so you can shift the weight. Because the center of gravity on a double sled is a lot higher, and it is really easy to crash these things. Like, the learning curve is rough. I mean, you definitely take a beating. There's a lot of crashes. And still, yeah, like, it's funny. In singles, I don't really crash anymore for whatever reason, but in doubles, oh yeah, like every run, there's always a good chance that something bad's going to happen.
So last month we had Jason on. What kind of doubles partner is he?
Yeah, so Jason and I go way back. When at the junior level, so something that people don't realize about luge is that luge is the fastest, most technical, and dangerous of the sliding sports. The Canadian Olympic Association did like a study to try to figure out how long it takes for a new athlete to get to your Olympic starting height. And skeleton, I believe it was 2 to 3 weeks that it takes for a complete novice to be able to go off the top. Now, they're not going to be good by any means, but they'll be able to make it down. In bobsled, I believe it was 3 to 4 weeks to get to your Olympic start height. And in luge, it was 4 to 5 years, just because we have way more control. But our sleds, when they get out of control, it can be really brutal. So you start at a much lower start height as a kid. So Jason and I, as junior athletes, we race singles and doubles, but from all of the lower start heights around the world. So we have a lot of history. And then when as I was progressing through as a junior, I knew I had an Olympic opportunity in singles. And so he actually joined another partner, and I went off to do singles for a decade and go to 3 Olympics. And now we're coming back together the last couple of years to team up together and try to win an Olympic medal in doubles, which has never been done before. So if I win an Olympic medal in singles and doubles, that is something that's my goal. And I need Jason to do that. And I'm lucky that he is a driven, motivated individual, and he trusts that I can switch back and forth, although many people think I'm crazy for doing that. So I've got a great partner who trusts me, who is motivated. And the last couple of years, unfortunately, I've had shoulder surgeries at the end of each season. And this year's the first year that I don't have shoulder surgery, so I feel awesome. But Jason had shoulder surgery right at the end of the season. So he's currently recovering, but we're going to hopefully get back on the sled end of July, beginning of August, and be working towards having a competitive start so we can be competing with the best in the world.
So does the third place last year in the World Luge Championships, does that give you encouragement, or does that put a target on your back?
Yeah, so right now, currently, the U.S. team in luge is a really technically driven sport. I like to compare it to Formula One over NASCAR, where NASCAR, there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot of standardization for the most part. And Formula One is like, here are some basic parameters, build. And I would say that, unfortunately, we've fallen outside of the competitive nations, where it's really led by Germany. Austria is so strong right now. You have Russia, who's been really strong, Latvia. So we're off the pace right now, and we're working to get back on it. We're doing a lot of wind tunnel testing. I'm working with aero engineers. I'm outsourcing parts from around the world. But the fact is, we have a really strong team of athletes who compete when it matters and are really consistent under pressure. So in the team competition, we're able to get those medals. And that really just shows the strength of our team. So I'm really optimistic that when the pressure is on, we show up. That is an awesome mentality to have. And that's what I love about my teammates, is that when the pressure's on, we don't really crack. And over the last couple of years, when it comes to the team competition, we're all going to have good runs. It's just, is that enough? And the really cool thing about Beijing, which is also so frustrating, is that no one's seen that track. Typically at this point, we've been to the track for a couple of weeks. We understand the layout. We know the flow. We understand where the challenging and difficult sections are going to be. But there's a good chance that the whole world's going to show up and have minimal training at that Olympic track, and that's going to be a huge advantage for us.
The neat thing is we put out our guest list a week or two before, who's going to be on the show, that kind of thing. And I was figuring I'd get a lot of people asking about the luge because, that's what you're known for. You were in the Olympics multiple times and winning the silver medal. No, that's not what the listeners want. They want to talk one thing and one thing only, Dancing with the Stars. So tell us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was the whole experience from how it started to finish was pretty wild. I was in Korea, and for whatever reason, it was a couple days after winning the medal, and I'm just in the village, and there's this random phone number that just comes onto my phone, and I'm like, I don't know who this is. I'll answer it. And it was one of the producers for Dancing with the Stars. And like, I honestly did not really believe it at first. It was kind of like, yeah, okay. Yeah, like I'll think about it, like whatever. I'll think about it for a day. Just call me back. And sure enough, it was very real. I was like, wait, you guys aren't joking at all. Like, I just never thought that I would be in a position to, make it to the mainstream. Luge is a really small sport. Like, we're not going to retire off of luge. I was working full-time jobs in the summer till about 25 years old, just, to make it through. And yeah, to get an opportunity to be on mainstream, that was wild. And also I couldn't turn it down because my mom loves the show, and I don't think she would ever forgive me if she's like, you could have been on Dancing with the Stars and you didn't take that opportunity. But yeah, it was terrifying. Like before my fourth run at the Olympics, the condition was below zero. The conditions were so challenging. It was so easy to make a mistake. A lot of competitors were messing up. And on the handles, I actually smiled before my fourth run, and you can catch that on the replay just because I felt good. Like I was training my entire life for this moment, and I was ready. Dancing with the Stars, totally different, where it's like I wasn't smiling before. I was terrified. So people ask, like, hey, what's scarier, luge or Dancing with the Stars? And I'm like, listen, I trained my entire life for a moment. That is much easier than training only 4 or 5 days for a dance that's going to be witnessed by like 8 to 10 million people. That is terrifying. But it was such a crazy experience where you have to challenge yourself to do something that like you're not very good at a high level. My partner, Whitney, she called me Brick at first just because I had bricks for feet. Like I lay down on a sled. I don't run. Yes, I feel like I'm very fluid in my body, but choreography is something that I've never really explored. And yeah, it was really fun just to challenge yourself like that and be in that position where you're like around a bunch of awesome athletes and this really, really cool experience. Unfortunately, the show was only 4 weeks long. It was a shortened season because, so I didn't make it to the finals. I went out at the same time with a national champion figure skater. So I do not feel bad at all. Like if I'm going out at the same level as a national champion figure skater, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I was just really starting to feel like I was starting to get it, which was such a bummer. But man, yeah, a really, really tiring, exhausting, terrifying, but enjoyable experience.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a phenomenal once-in-a-lifetime experience, and just something that is quite unique. Last thing, so I hear Team USA has a new star athlete. Nikolai, is that the name of the new star athlete?
Oh, yeah, Nikolai Mazdzar. We call him Nico for short. But, became a dad almost 4 weeks ago. And it's amazing how fast your life changes when you have a tiny human that you're responsible for. And there's no owner's manual, as all parents know. So we're just, we're going with the flow and doing the best that we can right now.
That is awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear things are going well with him, and congratulations, because that is just great news. Before we let you go, where on social media, where on the web, where can we learn more about Team USA Luge?
If you want to learn about USA Luge, I think that Instagram and Facebook is probably the best way to go. I pretty much only use Instagram, and it's just my last name, Mazdzer, Mazdzer. It's such a unique name that I have. If you just type in Mazdzer, it's like, you can find me pretty much anywhere. So I'm lucky about that. That's why we didn't have to. So our son Nikolai doesn't have a middle name. I've traveled the world, and honestly, middle names complicate a lot of things. So his last name is so unique where he won't have to worry about being recognized as somebody else.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, he's pretty safe with that one because you're right. I mean, a lot of athletes, we Google Joe Jones or Jock Jones or, somebody, just nice and easy name, or Bill Smith, and, a thousand different people. Yeah. Yeah, he's safe with that. He's going to be the only name to come up with that Google search. Well, we appreciated having you on the show, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Of course, it was awesome
today.
to join you.